Thank you, Joanne. Let me begin. I appreciate the warm introduction, and I could not be more excited than I am tonight. It's a privilege for me to be here this evening to have the opportunity to address WABA membership for the very first time. I want to begin with a thank you to each and every one of you on this call meeting. Your membership, your financial investment sustains this organization. Your advocacy absolutely inspires me. And your great passion, as I've seen over the past several weeks for this work, energizes me and all of my colleagues at WABA. So thank you. I especially want to thank WABA's board for the opportunity to lead this extraordinary organization. Allow me an opportunity first to just recognize my predecessor, Greg Billing, who spent 10 years sitting in the seat that I now occupy, and Kristen Frontiera, WABA's interim executive director during the transition. She's done an amazing job in moving us to this point, and I am grateful for her efforts and all the efforts that went into bringing us to this point. The work of both the board and staff, coupled with your generosity, has positioned WABA very well for the future. The state of WABA is strong. Bicycling holds its own special place in our lives and that of our communities. It is at once personal and recreational, but also an integral part, as I've learned through my experience in local government, an integral part of our multimodal transportation system. Bicycling connects our communities and plays a key role in reducing our carbon footprint and protecting our precious ecosystem. And bicycling is also an undeniable source of joy and means to a healthy lifestyle. And for others, like our messenger and delivery communities, bicycling is a necessary means to earning a living. For me, bicycling has been many of these things and more. As a child, bicycling was one of my absolute first sources of joy. The joy felt when a parent lets go of the bike seat and sends you on your way is truly euphoric and memorable. I can go back to the mental images I have of that very day and replay it in my mind. It's something I will never forget. Like most, I was anxious, but I did it, and we did it. Riding a bike is a universal experience that transcends demographics. It connects us. It brought, for me, freedom and exploration, and it opened horizons limited only by how fast and how far I could pedal my bike. I biked to Little League practice. I biked to high school. I biked 20 miles, 6 days a week from my Queens home, New York home, to a summer job as a caddy on Long Island at a golf course. I biked to class in college. I biked to City Hall as a council member. And now I still enjoy biking as a recreational activity with my family, especially on my favorite trail, which is the Mount Vernon Trail. In many ways, as I reflected on my remarks today, bicycling helped set me on a path that ultimately led me to WABA, an organization whose mission is the stuff of passion that speaks eloquently and directly to my own sense of service. It's why I sought and accepted WABA's offer and why I am proud to have joined the WABA community. For 50 years, and yes, this year is WABA's 50th anniversary. And believe us, we will be having a grand party for sure. 50 years since its founding, WABA has grown and evolved, but also stood for that mission that we all celebrate, to empower people to ride bikes, to build connections, and to transform places. Our mission and vision, just like in the last 50 years, needs to be nurtured, protected, and expanded. And that's part of my job as executive director that I embrace heartily. Existing and thriving for 50 years is not happenstance. It is itself a remarkable accomplishment worthy of celebration, if not awe. And I am in awe of the past 50 years and those who have led us to this point in our history. And I pledge to continue that great legacy that you all have worked so tirelessly to establish. How about WABA today? Today, WABA is strong, it's agile, and it's innovative. WABA continues in our community across Washington, D.C. and Maryland, Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia as a tireless champion for bicycling and walking, for just transit systems, and is a go-to resource and partner of choice throughout the region. We know this programmatically, as we'll delve into shortly, strategically, as well as financially. Here are a few things from the past that have impressed me so far. I'm in my 45th day at WABA, but so far, there's a list of things that I'm excited to share with you. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's a long and impressive list, and one I think that speaks volumes about our WABA. For the first time, we have a full-time 7-year, year-round trail ranger department on DC trails 7 days a week. We've gone from part-time seasonal trail rangers to year-round, and this is a huge development. These trail rangers are public-facing and our source of interaction with the community on the trails throughout metropolitan Washington, DC. I can share that nearly every jurisdiction in the region has voted to support completing the Capitol Trail Network, 881 miles of trail network, with one holdout, and we know Fairfax will be coming along shortly if our persuasive powers have any influence. But we have almost unanimity in support for our Capitol Trail Network, 881 miles. Think of that accomplishment and think about where we were 5 years ago and where we are today. Remarkable, remarkable. We've also worked with over 26 organizations across the region to create a shared vision for what legislative action on transportation equity looks like. 18 candidates for office locally have already pledged to support it, with more coming in literally every week. We've had forums in Montgomery and other jurisdictions and more on tap, and the response has been tremendous. The emails we've gotten have been, thank you, WABA, for hosting this, for caring about equity, for caring enough to share candidate views on these important issues with our community. We all know, and if we don't know, now you know, Mayor Bowser announced that the district is moving forward with its longest protected bike lane to date on Connecticut Avenue. And I like to repeat it because sometimes it's hard to believe how amazing this accomplishment is. But this bike lane will run from Connecticut, from Woodley Park on Connecticut Avenue, all the way to Maryland. Remarkable, remarkable accomplishment that would not have been achieved without the hard work of our advocacy team, our members, our supporters, and our allies in the community. This is the stuff that when you wake up, makes it easy to go to work because it demonstrates what your hard work can deliver for our community and for the folks who need it the most, and how we can truly have an impact. And I'm not leaving out Beach Drive because of our efforts has remained open 7 days a week to all people. We're waiting on a final decision from the Park Service about whether that will be permanent, but I can say that thousands of our members have signed on to a petition supporting it. And if past is prologue, that will carry great weight with our decision makers. And we will continue the fight to make sure that that remains open. Also, our educational piece, which was considerably challenged given the pandemic, continued to shine. And I want to recognize staff for this work because it's absolutely remarkable. we were able to teach and train more adults and more kids to ride safely over the past year than in any prior year, despite the pandemic. And that's owing to the commitment and the absolute uh, beauty of our staff's work in engaging with the community and having those training and safety sessions with those who really can benefit from it the most. And I will say, despite the ongoing pandemic, a pandemic that's impacted so many lives in so many ways, I don't know that any of us haven't been touched in some way by it. We've managed to maintain that joy. We managed to have good times riding bikes together. And both the 50 States ride and the Cider ride all sold out. And I will personally say, I can't wait to ride the Sweet Ride with all of you through Northern Virginia on June 18th. How do we translate that to numbers? And this is a great snapshot for our members to kind of get a sense of how transformative this past year has been and the solid footing WABA's on and the direction we're headed in. Let's take a look at some of the numbers. WABA's membership has grown by roughly 60% from this time last year. That's not 6%, it's not 16%, it's 60%. During the most troubling times, our members in our community said, we put our faith in WABA, and WABA has responded in kind. WABA now represents some 8,105 members, incredible dues paying members from across the region, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I want to thank all of you for being members, because as you can see, your membership is having a tremendous impact. I'll share a quick anecdote. I wasn't sure if I'll throw this in, but I will. Super Bowl Sunday, which we all just celebrated, the halftime show, the game was awesome. I got a call from Brian Mitchell, Washington football legend, and he said, Ludwig. I said, Brian. He's like, what are you doing calling me? Enjoy the game. I'm getting ready to make some wings and have a great time. He said, Ludwig, I wanted to let you know, I just submitted my membership to WABA, and I look forward to joining you guys in the effort to promote bicycling and safety in the region. I said, thank you, Brian. That is amazing. And I think Brian is reflective of the opportunity we have to grow our footprint even greater and to utilize spokespeople throughout the community, despite age, gender, their job descriptions, that really care about cycling. And that was just an added plus for me. It came at a great time. And I think it'll pay dividends in the long run for the association. Our staff, our amazing staff, I can't even begin to talk about our staff and the commitment they've demonstrated throughout the pandemic. And since I've been on board since January 10th, they're amazing, they're committed, and our staff has grown to 27 now with 26 full-time staff members. Financially, which is always a huge concern, and I'm happy to report WABA ended the fiscal year 2021 in the black. We had forecasted for a slight deficit, but a solid push. Our end of year campaign, your support, not only got us in the black, but gave us a surplus of almost $70,000. This solid financial standing sets WABA up for a really strong 2022. And then speaking of 2022, our budget for this year is WABA's biggest ever, and its most impactful. And with revenue and expenses totaling roughly 2.6 million, WABA is growing in a way that really reflects the priorities of our community and our commitment to our mission. And we should all applaud that and be very, very grateful I'm grateful for your generosity as we move forward, and it truly excites me. And for all these reasons and more, WABA is in an excellent position to deliver on our mission. And this is critical because we will need to use every tool and advantage that we possess to help move our work forward. Our mission has never felt more urgent than it does now. 2021 was a brutal year for traffic violence. Just last night, we witnessed a fatal pedestrian accident in Fairfax County. Um, this unfortunate state of affairs has left families shattered and lives forever changed. I want all of you to know that we're winning. We are absolutely winning, and please make no mistake that we're winning. But we can win faster, and our urgency is real within staff and within myself to move us towards that goal where we are absolutely protecting and changing lives and fostering the best and most safest communities that we can possibly do. So I say this to say everything we do, every increment of growth, some of which I've described, a new member, a cheerful hello from an outreach team, a new name on a petition, a new partnership, a meeting around a set of engineering drawings, that game-changing grant. We had Kristen and I had an amazing call with a corporate partner today. A sold-out joyful bike ride is in service of a region where people can bike and walk safely without fear. Leave no doubt there's some substantial work ahead, and I promise you that I will do my very best to make meaningful, permanent change in our region that not only advances our mission, but holds true to our core values. I promise this, I pledge this. When I accepted the job, that is what I took upon my shoulders. And those core values are joy, that joy I spoke about. It's boldness reflected in our history. It's integrity. It's how we approach the work we do in an honest and meaningful way. It's justice we do for our community at large and those we represent. And it's stewardship. It's how we protect the precious gifts we've been given in our generation, so that 50 years from now, another generation can reflect upon this amazing group and say, hey, at their 50th year, this WABA did amazing things and set us up for great success. And having said that, do know my commitment is firm and strong and without question goes to the core of who I am, goes to the core of who our staff is and have demonstrated themselves to be, goes to the core of who our board is and how they support and provide oversight over the work that we do, and goes to the core of who you are as our members. So I am so grateful that we're in this together, and simply want to close by saying I thank you for the opportunity to lead this organization. I am confident that we will have even greater days ahead, working together and staying clear to the mission. So thank you very much. And with that, I will pass it back to Kristen for our next step in our agenda.
Thanks, Ludwig. Thank you very much. For the first time in WABA history, we are way ahead of schedule, which is thrilling because that's going to give us more time for conversation. So you have, at this point, 3 choices ahead of you. None of them are legally binding. You can make a different choice after you make the choice here. So we have 3 breakout rooms. The first is Q&A with Ludwig and Joanne and also me. So stay here if you want to sort of plug in, if you want to dig into what's going on in the Q&A. All 3 of us are real chatterboxes, so I'm sure we will be able to fill that time. If you are interested in learning about what WABA membership means, what WABA membership looks like, how to sell a WABA membership to your friends, how you can plug in, what's coming down the pike in the next few months, pop on over to a breakout Zoom meeting with Jesslyn. And if you are excited about WABA's 50th anniversary and you want to figure out how you can help, how you can plug in, how you can continue to advance our work and set the vision for the next 50 years, join Anna and our two host committee co-chairs in that breakout room. Those those second two bullets are both meetings, so you'll be able to have your video on and chat, and those are going to be like pretty conversational. If you hang on to those links, which I just dropped in the chat, you can kind of dip in and out and hear a little bit of everything if you want. Things are going to be relatively informal from here. With that, Jessalyn, I'll ask you to take down the slides. Thank you. And invite questions. Again, if you're staying here for Q&A, welcome. Please go ahead and drop your questions in that Q&A box, and we will get started and go from there. I'm going to start with this question from Thomas about the Capitol Trails Coalition and the Capitol Trails Network. I will admit, Thomas, I do not know the answer to this. We will see if someone on the board might. But as a Fairfax resident, what can I do to help build support for the Capitol Trails project? Does anyone have thoughts on that right now?
I am happy to jump in. I was on the CTC call last night where we were doing regional priorities planning, and the only jurisdiction not to support today is Fairfax County, and it's really over, I believe, some very technical issues, but the support is there, I think, amongst some of the members that I know and have had the opportunity. Any opportunity that any of our members have to reach out to the Fairfax County Board and its leadership, to Fairfax County's transportation staff, I encourage you to do that in support of the trail system. I'm convinced that with that support, we'll be able to get unanimity between all of the local jurisdictions in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But I can tell you that an outreach opportunity is there for Fairfax County residents to reach out to their leadership and to planning and transportation staff in that jurisdiction. And I believe it'll go a long way to moving them ever closer to joining the rest of the region on the Capitol Trail.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a couple questions about 9th Street. I will admit I am a Shaw resident myself, so I'm personally very invested in this project. But I think Matt and Sherry both are asking what's the status here. And then also to Matt's question, we saw an over-the-top reaction from a business group when 9th Street was announced. How does WABA manage this type of misinformation about the addition of bike lanes, i.e. saying that bike lanes will kill businesses? Ludwig, do you want to start and I can jump in with any other context?
Absolutely. I'll start with this, that change is often difficult, disruptive, and uncomfortable. And adding something new to a community raises fears that are understandable. When we encounter an unreasonableness or, as described, over-the-top reaction, our goal is to be a source of information and truth. And that's the best antidote to misinformation and untruths. So we stand by that. Our advocacy for bike lanes in this particular community, as well as others, stays consistent. It's what's in the best interest of the overall community at large. And we don't believe and have not been convinced that it will damage business interests at all. Just the opposite, that it will in fact create an environment where all communities can grow, including the business community that fears that they may be wrongfully impacted. And I think that's proven to be true throughout the opportunities we've supported in the district and elsewhere, that we've had really good outcomes and a very warm reception and a favorable reception at that.
From a just sort of a hard facts update, the 1.5 mile 9th Street protected bike lane is happening. It's in the plans. It's not going anywhere. We won that one. It's a matter of timing and budget at this point. So either late this year or early next year, we will see it break ground. Sorry, it's still me. Okay. Question from Karen, and I think Joanne, I'll pass this one to you first. What is the biggest challenge you're anticipating for the next year, and how are you planning on tackling it? And I would maybe expand that one out to other board members present as well, and then Ludwig.
So I don't think this is. So I'm going to caveat my answer because I'm answering it from a board perspective and not necessarily from the work that our staff are doing. And when I say that, I mean that as the board, we're focused on sort of longevity of the organization, stability, and sustaining the growth that that we're on. So one of the things that's on my mind is actually physical space, not just going back into the office as many of us are as we try and navigate COVID, but actually physical space to house everyone. Our team has grown immensely during the pandemic. And as we try to bring each other back, making sure that we can do that in a safe way that continues to support their professional growth in the community. So that's been on my mind. The other items I would say are more about as we celebrate our 50th anniversary, not just looking back, but also looking forward. You know, one of the main things in our strategic plan is that it grounds our mission in a much larger vision. And that creates both opportunity, but also some tension to make sure that we continue to stay focused on our mission while also partnering well. And that's something that I think Ludwig's leadership in particular really brings to this organization, which is figuring out how to be a good partner so that we're actively making progress towards shared goals. And we have experience in this. It's both something we do through our coalitions, coalition building. So the Capital Trails Coalition is one example, the Transportation Equity Network is another. And that's something that I think we will continue to see and explore because it allows a few people to have an outsized impact. But doing that well requires different resources, different modes of operating, different technology even. And so those are some of the things at the back of my mind.
Other board members or Ludwig want to chime in on that? As development director, the answer is always fundraising. So I'll spare you mine.
Yeah, I would share. Our strategic plan is my Bible. It's what I refer to. And as Kristen shared, being able to have the resources to successfully execute that plan is critical, to build out our staff, to make sure our staff has the resources to be as successful in their positions as and their work as they can be, is, I think, a constant. COVID has thrown everyone a curveball, and part of the conversations I will share that we're having in office now is, what does return to work look like? And Joanne mentioned it appropriately, you know, our space issue as far as office space and accommodating a growing staff now at 27 folks. That's part of the issue. I think part of the challenge going forward, and it's the challenge I think we're all presented with, whether you're a nonprofit or for-profit going forward, being able to do the work and do the work successfully, but also creating that sense of community within the organization, I think is critical. I think as well, executing on our plan is going to be challenge is often a difficult word. I'd rather use the word opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity for us this year to expand the reach of WABA, to, build off of an incredibly strong foundation, stay true to our roots, but also expand our reach in a way that helps us achieve even more going forward. So part of my challenge is working with staff to reorient them to making sure that the work we're doing is aligned with our strategic plan, that we have our benchmarks and measures, that the community benefit as well. I can go through all of our departments, but making sure on the communication side, for example, that the successes we're having are ably communicated with membership and with the broader community so that folks can see the good work we're doing, can recognize the opportunity and can join in it and support it at so many levels. So I would share that as opportunities going forward. And really just for me, this is incredible work. And the challenge going forward is to make sure we're delivering on what the board has put forth as far as our strategic plan and what the expectations are for our membership, which is growing and is so loyal and so supportive, and making sure we're delivering for our stakeholders is going to be critical going forward. And finding those opportunities, I think, is essential. And they're there, and we're there. Quite honestly, WABA is there and on the ground. Finding opportunities in Northern Virginia, for example, or in Southern Maryland and Prince George's County are areas where I see potential for incredible growth and to build our bandwidth and to build our strength as an organization, to build we have an amazing advocacy team, our A team, but to even solidify the strength that they have. Northern Virginia is hungry for it. I believe Prince George's County is hungry for it. In navigating both of those demographics is going to be critical, and staffing that up as well, and being able to dedicate staff time to those jurisdictions, as well as obviously to Washington, D.C. is going to be critical going forward.
Thanks, Ludwig. I want to flag for question askers. I'm not going to hit all of the sort of project specific questions here, in part because the people who do that work and know it best are not with us this evening, but I will commit to getting you an answer in writing in the next few days. So do not despair, and thank you for your patience. Let's talk about local politics. I'll share Steve's question, which is both a shout out and a question, my favorite type. Garrett has done a fabulous job helping Ward 3 bike advocates organizing to get Connecticut Ave approved. Incredible. Political for DC, with Mary Cheh retiring, and I actually would pose this as a broader question around our engagement in elections and in politics. With Mary Cheh retiring, if Phil Mendelssohn is elected, he will need to appoint a new council transportation committee, a new head of the transportation committee, which is a role that Councilmember Cheh has been filling the last few years. And how are we engaging with Phil? But I think more broadly, how are we engaging with that election and others? Ludwig, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. Thank you. Sure. We, I think at the macro level, WABA remains engaged politically in a nonpartisan way to create opportunities for all parts of DC proper, each ward, to understand the issues, get to know the candidates, and to have a give and take and back and forth with electeds and candidates for office. So that's something WABA does, and WABA has pledged to do, and we do it exceptionally well. This election cycle is no exception. If not, we've seen an increase in our willingness to do nonpartisan, across the board opportunities to bring candidates together with the community so that they can talk about the issues that they care most about. I've weekly conversations, if not daily conversations, with our advocacy team about DC, about the future elections in a very nonpartisan way. And I'm saying nonpartisan for a reason, because it's very important we do that. And it is on our radar. We are in the communities. We are talking to the people on the ground, from ANC commissioners up to candidates, up to the actual electeds. So we are looking and finding opportunities to engage. And I think first blush, my first response is that is what's on the table and has been on the table for WABA. And that's what we continue to do. And then knowing our ability to identify and provide the most solid candidates that support a multimodal transportation agenda is going to be critical going forward. We don't do endorsements. No, we don't. We provide every candidate an opportunity to share their views and positions and opinions. And then it's left for us to work, and then for our allies to work in the communities in which they live, to support the very best candidates for office, which is something we don't do politically, but we do set the stage and present the opportunity for the community to engage with all electeds, no matter political affiliation.
Okay. As we were having a lot of these conversations about the 50th anniversary, I've started hearing a lot of stories about the old days. So the spirit of getting radical, I feel like really speaks to this. Question from Richard, also a shout out to Richard. WABA is an amazing organization. I'm glad to be an active member. Things are moving in the right direction, but we're moving further away from Vision Zero. I wonder whether the time has come to call for more drastic change using more radical, high-profile tactics like demonstrations, sit-ins, etc. Is WABA thinking about this? I know I am.
Yeah, I'm happy to share that I was blessed to have a very diverse political background before joining WABA. I did the work locally, Northern Virginia, ran campaigns, was a candidate myself, did the work nationally for groups like Planned Parenthood for national elections, and literally traveled some 40,000 miles across the country, everywhere from Oregon to Miami to Houston, LA, New England, you name it, I was there. Little Rock, Arkansas, you name it. Meeting with elected stakeholders, training staff and volunteers on the ground in all these jurisdictions, building relationships with organizations that supported the vision of the organization I was working for, and being successful at it. I'm excited about the opportunity. We have a lot of, as advocates and part of the work we do, we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, and we will always look to work through the necessary channels to the extent that they're useful and effective. And I believe that they will be. And I think that's where relationship building comes into play. As far as traditional tactics, when all else fails, WABA has a history of boldness, and WABA has a history of fighters. And there's no way that we're not going to employ every reasonable tactic and meaningful tactic and productive tactic to move our agenda forward. But we will exhaust that list, and it's a continuum of tools that we can utilize. If we get to the point where we'll revisit the issue as the situation arises, but I will just share that I am one to have a full toolbox and utilize it when and where needed, knowing that the obvious and necessary channels are those that are always available, and reasonable people surely will agree that the overwhelming majority of our positions, if not all of our positions, are reasonable, rational, and well thought out. If you see WABA protesting, then that means someone is not getting the message. And if we have to ride to them to give them the message, then so be it. So be it.
Thanks. And apologies, I just realized I had myself spotlighted for everybody. I'm sorry you were all watching me do this and not that person speaking. Let's talk about sort of jurisdictional limitations and staffing limitations. We have a question from Bill about deepening engagement in Prince George's County, and a couple other places in Maryland. And there's always a demand for more WABA everywhere. And how do we think about where we're organizing, where we're putting staff capacity? Joanne, maybe I'll give you a first pass at that.
Well, I won't say that I have the answer, other than I'm nodding my head because I agree that that's a key challenge and an issue. And I was sort of speaking to that about this idea of region and how do we resource that. So what I can share is that one of Ludwig's tasks in this year is to look at our staff organization and what changes, if any, might be needed to meet the mission. And then with our strong financial position, then staffing and changing staffing becomes an opportunity we didn't necessarily have before. So I don't have specifics, but since Ludwig has been doing some of the thinking, he might, but it may also be too soon. He has, after all, been on the job for 45 days. So
it's been an amazing,
share what you can, but yeah.
And trust me, we have thought through this at the senior staff level. Kristen and I, Jeremiah and I, our weekly check-in was today, and this was one of the key points of our conversation was, what do we need to do to staff out to the outer suburbs and to be fully present in Northern Virginia and in Prince George's County. And that is a priority. That is without question a priority. Our budget for 2022 is what it is, and I see opportunities in our 2023 budget to factor in new positions on the field level in those jurisdictions. The question that we're absolutely wrestling with right now is, how do we realign our advocacy team, our A-team staff, to reflect the needs of DC as well as Southern Maryland and Virginia. So I want the person who asked the question to know that is front and center of the thought process with our advocacy team, with the ultimate outcome being we have an opportunity and some contracts to perhaps realign some staff work in the interim until we get to the 2023 budget. But it's front and center of the work that I've done. The board's been very clear. Our membership's been very clear in Northern Virginia and in Southern Maryland. I was just in Alexandria for Winter Bike to Work Day, and the advocates are tremendous, and they would love an increased presence from WABA there. They consider us an incredible partner and ally in the work that they do. And I fielded those inquiries with a mindset that I'm going to try and work with our senior staff and realign and work with our organizational chart, particularly in the advocacy realm, to get dedicated staff there. I think it's what's needed, it's what's important, and it's what's ultimately going to help us grow as an organization in those jurisdictions. So it's top of mind for me. Living in Alexandria, working in Alexandria, having worked in Arlington as well, it's top of mind for me. And it's something I would just say stay tuned and continue. And if you're a member in Northern Virginia, reach out to WABA, let us know your interests so that we can have allies on the ground as we build that infrastructure and lobby and seek to influence beneficial policy in NOVA. So definitely top of mind. Please know that.
Okay, we have a question about pay and pay equity at WABA. Someone is wondering what we're planning to do to reduce pay disparity between highest and lowest paid employees. Joanne, do you want to take a first go at that one?
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge that the question is about pay disparity between the levels, but I'm actually going to talk more about fair compensation because it's a project that we on the board that is actively underway. So over the past year, we worked closely with an HR consulting firm to basically do an analysis of all of our salaries. And the first step was making sure that staff were in job descriptions that had the right title, as well as accurately reflected their duties, and that they were being compensated fairly, or that we had a compensation structure that enabled fair compensation for all staff. And not just about a key part of it obviously is, the pay that our staff receive, that it reflects the work that they do. But it's also about helping staff build a career and find a career path, both in WABA and potentially outside of WABA. Just like any small nonprofit organization, you can grow, but if there's somebody ahead of you, you may have to step out of the organization in order to continue growing your career, and trying to make those types of decisions and what we could provide in terms of compensation a transparent or open part of that conversation. So anyway, so we did the study. The results weren't what we would want to see, which is that our staff were underpaid. And so the board took action to rectify that, and that process is ongoing. So in January, within the first 3 weeks of Ludwig on the job, talk about challenging start to a new job, he was tasked with helping us roll out a compensation philosophy, revising staff salaries across the board, and more importantly, making sure that over the coming year, we are getting to the point where every staff person is paid equitably. So we had sort of certain targets that we needed to hit this year, and then we are setting aggressive targets next year as well. Now, to try and address your question about pay disparity, I would say that isn't something we have taken on yet as an objective per se. Rather, what we're trying to do is make sure that we have clear job descriptions that are benchmarked against what is being paid in the industry. But that is something that we could take on. What I can share is that internal to the board, we started to discuss is benchmarking against the industry where we want to remain. We thrive because of the work that our staff do. And do we need to think about compensation differently as a result? We are very proud of the benefits package that we provide at WABA, covering the full cost of healthcare and other items like that, but it's not take-home pay. And so it's something we continually discuss. And as Kristen said, I think a fair and important question.
Okay, let's talk about, okay, we've got a couple that I don't know the answer to. Let's talk about FAB, actually. This is great. We were just DMing someone who is on the board of FAB at this meeting, but what is WABA's interaction with FAB? And I can add a little bit of color here. The Fairfax Alliance for Better Biking was originally a sponsored project of WABA before it spun off into its own 501c3. before my time. So at least 5 years ago, I don't know, I cannot remember exactly when. And they've been a really great partner to us in a number of things, especially in our trails work. But Ludwig or Joanne or others, anything to add there? Debbie, I don't know if you have a connection with FAB, but I know you're a board Fairfaxer now.
No, I've done a lot of work with the Fairfax City group, but no, I haven't been involved, but it's something that I hope to get involved with.
Awesome. Okay, let's shift to a darker tone, but what are the policies and solutions we can or should be supporting to reduce the absolute tragedy of dangerous driving that's increased in the pandemic? It's something on lots of our minds every time we leave our houses. So, Ludwig, do you want to start? I'm happy to add a little bit of context there as well.
Sure. I'll start by acknowledging, I think one of the greatest disappointments of all disappointments, the pandemic has been known for a lot of suffering. But one would have thought with fewer people commuting that at least our streets would be a little safer. And that proved to be just the opposite. And I think that speaks to a mindset for me that needs to be addressed. And I think it needs to be addressed structurally through engineering, to working with local governments in planning and engineering our streetscape in a way that options to abuse that streetscape don't exist, as well as working with the community at large to reorient them to a life in existence daily that takes in mind all commuters at all levels, in particular bicyclists and pedestrians who are the most vulnerable in that spectrum. And I think opportunities exist to work at that level with our local governments, with our departments of motor vehicles, with our planning departments and our transportation departments at local levels. And I think that's going to be a very important and necessary conversation. We've seen the benefits of having bike lanes, but then protected bike lanes. And Kristen and I went on a tour a couple of weeks ago locally, just rode around, and she showed me, Ludwig, this is the gold standard, and this is what we have to get by at some levels across the region. And for some, what we have to get by at is not very comforting. WABA did a study and a survey, and safety was the #1 concern. And our ability to make people in our region feel safe and work with our localities so that people feel safe to bike and walk is going to be, when we talk about challenges, going back to the earlier question, that's probably the biggest challenge, is working with our local governments to ensure that our infrastructure, the engineering, the mindset, the approach is one that takes into account vehicular traffic, but also takes into account equally pedestrians and bicyclists, so that all are equal players and have equal footing, and safety is ensured, whether you're behind a car and armored with that shell of protection, or if you're on a bike and much more vulnerable, or walking and even more vulnerable. So I see the opportunity there to really have some very philosophical questions, but questions that will ultimately have a very practical impact on how our streetscapes look and how things are engineered and what the psychology of of our streetscapes take into account going forward? I think these are very, very important questions. And I think WABA can play an important role in facilitating those conversations with various stakeholders in the community and in local government and with our allies.
Thanks, Ludwig. I think that I have covered all of the questions that I know we're going to be able to answer tonight. Again, I am capturing them and saving them, and I'm going to figure out who knows the answer and then get back to you in the next week. If you want to keep dropping your shout outs in the chat, that's great. We'll love to pass them along. We still have a little bit of time, incredibly. Keep your questions coming as well. But Joanne or Ludwig, is there anything that you wanted to say, but I didn't let you because I was really running a tight ship on timing, and now I'm happy to give you a couple minutes.
You already know how excited I am about the 50th. So I think that's a huge opportunity for the organization. It is something that I think is going to be incredible to celebrate. As things are evolving, I think it's going to be able provide an opportunity for us to be able to come together outdoors as a group for the first time in a long time. And I'm incredibly excited about that. There's a separate chat on the 50th, but the 50th is the fun part of the job that I hope everybody gets excited about, because it's a chance to celebrate those folks back in the 70s who had a vision and had no idea that, wow, 2022, this is what this organization is going to be and do, and how impactful it's going to be. But they set us on an amazing path. So I give shout out and kudos to the founders, to that legacy group of individuals. And I think we all owe them debt. And that's part of repaying the debt for me is to honor the work that they did and even expand it and grow it. So that's how I approach our 50th. Reflect on the past, celebrate the present, and then let's plan for an amazing 50 more years where some of you young folks will still be on. You might be around for that. I probably won't. I don't know. I pray I am. If I am, I'll be an old man, but I'll be there supporting, no doubt. But I'm so excited about our 50th, and I hope you guys are as well. I know Kristen and her team have some great events planned for the 50th, and I think it's something we can all get excited and rally around. Yeah.
Joanne, I recognize I'm sort of putting you on the spot with wrap-up thoughts, but is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I actually think there's one more question in the chat that's sort of embedded in what seems like a specific question, but I think it speaks to the larger kind of vision, and it's from Karen. Sorry, I shouldn't say chat, in the Q&A.
Great. Yeah.
Where she was talking about how sometimes when WABA shows up, one of the counterpoints is that WABA is not part of the community. And what are we doing with that? How do we manage our relationship, or how do other organizations manage their relationship with us, so that doesn't in of itself become the point of resistance? And to me, I think, that goes back to this question of really being an organization that empowers local action, and trying to figure out how we can do that better. I think we have pockets of success that we can build on. And to me, it should never be about WABA displacing, but really about WABA lifting up and bringing resources that those who live in the community might not otherwise have. So I did want to just call out that. And then I don't know, I see Ludwig, you're nodding your head, or Kristen, if you have any additional thoughts on that particular question. Okay. And now on the spot wrap up. I think I'll just keep it simple, and go with the theme of thanks and gratitude, a little bit of urgency, as many have noted that despite our efforts and despite winning, there's still a very real need for the work that we do. As we get more people on the road, on bikes, there's more protection needed. So I am glad that you're here for it. I hope that you're here for the 50th and here for the 75th when that comes around. We couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much for your time, your energy, your passion. Thank you.
Okay, I have, as we are wrapping up, I have a 1-question survey for everybody to take, so that if you are interested in plugging in and moving on a few other things with us, we would love to know. So I just dropped that in the chat. If you have a question that we didn't answer, I will get you an answer in the next week. If you have a question that you didn't know how to put into words, or you want to unpack or talk a little bit more about, I'm here for you. You can drop us a line at membership@waba.org anytime, and Jocelyn or me or Anna, one of us will find out the answer and get back to you. And with that, I believe we are good to go. Thank you all very much for being here, for showing up on this suspiciously beautiful February evening. I hope that you had some time to get outside, and that you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Be well.